much.
Good evening and welcome to our first ever virtual back to school meet and greet with our very brand new superintendent, Cheryl Watson Harris, who has been here for all of 6 weeks. She comes to us, oops, my video is not on. I apologize for no video there. She comes to us from her last position in New York City, but it impresses me that you've only been at 2 school systems for your career. When she left New York City, she had been the first deputy chancellor and helped lead the system through the beginnings of the COVID pandemic, and the New York City school system has 1.1 million students, which is tremendous. And so you earned your Bachelor's of Science from Marymount College and your Master's in Education from Harvard, and you're still a student, right? You're working on your PhD from New York University. Madam Superintendent, I am thrilled to introduce you to the Dunwoody and Greater DeKalb community tonight. And I'd like to give you the floor to introduce yourself.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you for creating a space for me to be in community with the larger Dunwoody community. You know, it's been my goal in these first 100 days, but I've just been here now a month and a week, tomorrow, a month and a week, to really make sure that I was out as much as possible to really listen and to learn. What drew me to DeKalb County School District in the first place was the incredible diversity and the uniqueness of all of the communities. And the only way I can really learn that, to celebrate that, to help to continue to move us all in the right direction, is to be out in the field and out really listening and learning. So again, I'm just grateful that you put this town hall together this evening so that I can learn a little bit more, share as much as you would like, and really just hopefully set a precedence for accessibility and two-way communication. That's really important to me, that we establish structures and systems that we have two-way communication and a clear through line for every student to the superintendent, and from the superintendent to every student, with families and communities and staff and all of the other great people, you know, along the way. So thank you so much.
That's awesome. And I'm a big believer that communication is key to almost every problem can be solved by better communication. So yes. If you don't mind, we have some questions, and I would like to just pick your brain and let you share your thoughts. You mentioned that diversity drew you to DeKalb. I know you must have had lots of options. Is there anything else that spoke to you about our school system? Any other reason you chose us?
Yes, there were a couple of very clear reasons why I applied for the superintendency for DeKalb County School District. First, I should say I'm very familiar with the area. You know, I have family here and have spent time here and have, you know, heard great things about the school district from my cousin who raised her boys here. So it wasn't just kind of a shot in the dark. It was definitely a community that I was familiar with, that I enjoyed the time that I had spent here and could see it as a community where I would want to make that my home. In terms of the school district specifically, my career, as you has mentioned, was largely in Boston public schools and also in New York City public schools, which are considered large urban school districts. So the size of DeKalb was also attractive to me. I like a slightly larger district, an opportunity to, you know, address challenges that, as I said in my interview process and have said often, you know, challenges excite me. You know, I was definitely looking for, and something else that drew me to DeKalb is that, you know, it has such a rich history. And, you know, at one point was really considered the premier school district in Georgia. But it also looked like there was some maybe years of turnover and the hope of being a part of the restoration of that stellar reputation of the school district. When I looked at kind of what I saw to be the needs based on what I was reading in terms of what the community wanted in their superintendent, it very much aligned to what I believe to be my strengths. And so I definitely wanted to come to be a part of the future of DeKalb County School District.
That's really good to hear. Many people in Dunwoody know, I don't know that you know, that I was a DeKalb County school parent for 21 years, I believe, consecutively. My youngest child is starting her sophomore year in college. I was an elementary school parent for 15 straight years in DeKalb County. So
That's great.
we have a long history with DeKalb County,
Mm-hmm.
and I am thrilled you are here. So you talked about a challenge. Well, school systems all over the country faced a challenge in the spring, and DeKalb was no exception.
Mm-hmm.
And virtual learning started, kind of overnight, right? One day we were discussing whether or not the virus was going to be a big impact, and then the next day schools canceled almost indefinitely. And the transition was difficult. How will it be different next week?
Mm-hmm.
When we start back virtually again.
Mm-hmm. First, I just have to express my gratitude to the educators that pretty much, reimagine what school could be overnight. Pretty much.
Absolutely. They were heroes.
Absolutely. And, did the very best that they could. They did that without the adequate professional development, with, perhaps not all the supports that they needed to best do their job, and in turn best support our scholars. It was also, an incredible challenge in asking more of our families in terms of we all know parents are the first teacher anyway, but maybe not of the mathematics on specific grade levels. And so what will be different is we have tried to learn from the gaps in the spring. And we have created a comprehensive and strategic plan for what virtual instruction will look like. And that started with the professional development that we offered to the teachers this year. As you know, our teachers came back officially on the 10th, this past Monday, but we invited them to a 3-day institute that began last Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And our chief academic officer and team created very high quality modules to address all of the gaps that we had heard from teachers, from their own comfort level, setting up the platforms, to how do you do like engaging lessons with the students, etc. We also, I was not pleased, and I know we were all not incredibly pleased with the level of engagement and how we were tracking student attendance. And so we've put together a much more robust student engagement plan. We have checks and balances to really be able to monitor who's logging on, who's not logging on, counselors to do outreach to ensure that all of our scholars are engaged, as well as better supports for families, creating touch points, professional development, if you will, for families to be able to better assist their students at home. So what will be different is one, it's not a plan that was developed overnight. Right. It was a very thoughtful plan, one that addresses what we heard from our students, from our faculty, from our parents. And is it ideal? Will it still have, bumps and bruises? Absolutely, but we're all figuring this out together, and we are 100% committed to continuous improvement. And that is why we are creating multiple opportunities for families to give us input and feedback. And as we are, one last thing I'll add there is one thing I love about our plan is that the professional development isn't just all upfront. We've created spaces on Wednesdays throughout the school year to stop, be reflective. What have we learned? What additional things do we need to continue to improve and address as we move forward?
That sounds like a very well thought out plan.
Thank you.
And I know that parents are glad to hear that.
Mhm.
Debbie sent in an email wondering, you've said a lot about what's going to be different. Can you speak a little bit about what parents should do immediately next week if they find that things aren't different, or that, her concern was that teachers were just giving homework essentially in the spring and not instructing?
Yes. We have two words that our families should know, and I know that all of our families know these words, but I'll just say them anyway and say what it means to us. Students should expect, parents should expect a combination of synchronous and asynchronous instruction. So all families should expect, and this is right now our students in grades 3 through 12, and we can talk about the early childhood a little bit later, but they should expect times when the teacher is live, just as we are right now, in person, not in person, but a live asynchronous experience for their students. And then there will be some asynchronous assignments that are posted that extend lessons for scholars to do on their own. So it should not be a case of just homework and then, no direct instruction.
Could you, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say to your question.
What those terms meant for the people that might not know the async, I can't even say them, the
yes.
instructional descriptions you used.
Yes. So synchronous is when the teacher is live and the students are logged on, and just like what they would experience in school, but they're doing it in a virtual space, like what we're doing right now. We're live. You're asking me a question, I'm responding to you. We can see each other, etc. The asynchronous instruction is when students are expected to be doing schoolwork, but they're not on the computer necessarily. They're not, the teacher is not live at that moment. That might also be a time where there's a recording. A teacher may have recorded a lesson, and there's an opportunity for the students to watch that lesson and then to do an assignment. So your original question was, what should parents do if that is not happening? Most certainly, you should contact the child's teacher first. And then, if you don't receive the response that satisfies you at that time, then, we have an escalation path. Then it would be the principal, the regional superintendent, and then ultimately myself. So, but hopefully it won't have to get that far. I know our teachers, our principals are very committed to meeting the needs of our students. And I'm sure that they would welcome feedback if it isn't exactly what parents are expecting or confused about. You should also know our website is our real, and we know that that's not the only way that we should be communicating with families, but our schools and our central website is a real great resource for a lot of the information parents have been asking for. So we have sample schedules that are posted. And so families should really go to the website just to see the kind of general expectations, and that if they do have questions, they can go directly to their child's teacher or principal. Between yesterday and today, almost all of our schools should have hosted their virtual open houses, where parents should have received the specific information. I'm giving big picture, but what that looks like, for the Dunwoody community, for the specific schools that your children attend, you would get that information at the school open house.
That's fantastic. You have made a commitment to revisit this decision about virtual every 4 weeks, I think, keyed off school board meetings. Yes. Can you talk a little bit about what you're looking for to start to get students back on campus?
Yes, we are working very closely with the DeKalb Health Department and really looking to the trends Right now, unfortunately, the trends are moving in the wrong direction. So returning back into the brick and mortar space wouldn't be something that we can consider at this time. We are, once the numbers start to move in the other direction, we previously did a report that showed the guidance in terms of low, moderate, high cases. When we begin to move more into that moderate and low incidence environment, that is when we will, begin to return to school. However, I did share this at the last board meeting. While we are super focused on ensuring that our return in a virtual space is high quality, we also have teams that are already preparing for the return to school. Our chief operations officer, the work that we're doing in our buildings, putting up partitions, the work that we're doing to prepare for transportation, etc. So we are in the midst of preparing those plans and reports. We're going to start to socialize those with our families and just get them out for feedback and response. So we're planning for the return to school, but we're not going to do that before we know that we're in a safe space to do so with the numbers.
That sounds very well thought out. I presume you're working with Dr. Ford, the health director? Yes, she's fantastic.
Yes. Right. We hosted actually a town hall and she was, a guest speaker. So she's a wealth of knowledge and just a really great thought partner for our district in terms of returning back to school in a brick and mortar space, as well as just educating ourselves about how we can help to flatten the curve during this time.
Right, because we all play a role, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
We wear our mask everywhere, right?
Yes.
So we have an email from Tara who's concerned about children's mental health and socialization. What is the district going to do about this in a virtual setting?
Great question. And I'm sorry I didn't touch on that at the beginning when I said what was different. We all recognize the impact of, we're looking at this as a traumatic experience for students, for staff, for families. We have started a series of trauma town halls. We had one on the 4th, one on the 11th. They were absolutely fantastic. I was sharing with some people as I was listening, I was getting so many tips for myself and my own family. So we're starting with just creating a space for families, for parents to talk about how we support our children during this time. We also have our counselors and our social workers that are reaching out to schools, partnering with teachers and school-based staff to provide that additional level of support for any student that we know needs that. And then we're doing some innovative things like our Dial a Teacher or Counselor program. Yes, that we're really looking forward to get up and running so that parents can call in real time if they need help with, helping their students academically, or if they need to provide, they're maybe just, they're in a tough spot or their child is in a tough spot and they want someone to give them some language or advice or tips. We'll be able to provide that as well. We also have on our website a space for students to share if they need help. We know that for many of our children, if they're in a tough situation, they normally would have a friend in the building, someone at school that they can speak to or go to for help. And because we're not in that space, we want to make sure that we maintain opportunities for our scholars to reach out if they need help.
That's a fantastic plan. And I know that students and parents will be relieved to know that there's supports there. Stephanie wondered if we are really ready to start Monday or if the start date should be changed. I'm just throwing that out because she said.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you for that really tough question, Stephanie.
Right.
We're starting on Monday. We're starting on Monday. And we're ready. We're ready to start on Monday in terms of outreach to our scholars, making sure that they begin to build relationships with their teacher, to get back into that scholar mindset. Is everything as polished as it would be if we were in the brick and mortar space with balloons out front and give away pencils for every child as they arrived with their names on their desks and all of their books and materials set up for them? No, we are not ready to that degree. And we're going to continue to work to make sure that every scholar has exactly what they need to be successful. But we're excited to kick off on Monday. For our younger students, we do have packets that have been set up with great and exciting materials for them. We have begun the device distribution. My goal is to have, this is a Cheryl Watson Harris goal, is to have, a device in the hands of every student just as soon as possible. But the device distribution plans that parents should have received at this point calls for all of our students grades 3.
Oops, she froze. Can you hear me? Superintendent Watson Harris?
Not receive that information, that they should be reaching out.
That's, yes. And actually, I'm going to add on to this question, which is, we always have stragglers who show up at school a few days after school starts or a week or so after. What is the system doing to find the kids who might have not, whose families might have realized school started because the school bus started coming through the neighborhood?
Yes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we do have some scholars that have those challenges. And our goal, as I mentioned earlier, around the student engagement data and really monitoring that in a very tight way. I'm requiring a weekly report that shows me exactly what percentage of our scholars are engaged, by region, by school, and our regional superintendents are also really heavily monitoring student engagement. The first person that we have to rely on to make sure that our students are engaged and that we know where they are is the classroom teacher. That's the person closest to the students. And again, our teachers have been making phone calls, reaching out, assessing where all of the students are. And if they're unsuccessful at that point, then there are, again, counselors and social workers that are the next level of outreach. But we want our scholars to know that even though we're in this virtual space, this is still school, and we have to maintain high expectations. And that we're going to support them every step of the way. We're going to be flexible and patient, but we're also going to hold them accountable for what they have to learn because we need them to learn and become all the great people that they're destined to be. But we have to make sure that we're supporting and we're loving, but we're also holding them accountable for what they're supposed to be doing.
And Heather wants to know about your experience in New York City and what that's taught you about working to keep DeKalb students and teachers safe.
Absolutely. So yes, I was in New York City, which was really the epicenter of this pandemic. I will start with answering that question from my heart. What it really did teach me was the value of human life. And you may have heard this or maybe not, we lost a total of 79 students and staff members within the school district. And so there was a point, during these last couple of months where we had to start almost every staff meeting with a moment of silence because the night before we perhaps lost a student or a staff member. And when I see where the trends are going here, we don't want that to be the reality in DeKalb. So even though some of the decisions, we're divided as a DeKalb County school district family. We have people on all sides of all of the issues. But what my experience with that really taught me is, we have to be decisive. That's what's needed in terms of leading through crisis and change. And we have to, lead with the information that we really believe is going to keep everyone safe. So that's my, that's from my heart in terms of what I learned. I also learned a lot in terms of the device distribution, the inventorying, how we, can tighten up a few things. We have an incredible team doing incredible work. I just have seen this play out on a larger scale. And so I'm able to come with some resources and some suggestions about how we can continue to just be even greater. And so from just what we learned around our learning management system, I know when I came here, there was some debate around Verge versus Zoom or some other, Google, I think it was Google Classroom. We went through all of that in New York, and that's why I was very flexible right away. I said, if Google Classroom is what the teachers want to use, we're going to make that work. And that was also the orientation and mindset of the staff here too. But yes, those are just some things that I bring from my experience in New York. But I will tell you, I have been incredibly impressed with a lot of the work that was already in development here, and have even shot some samples to friends in New York to say there's also a lot of things that New York can learn from DeKalb County School District.
So speaking of devices, one of the concerns I have for some families in my community is that they don't have devices at home for their children, and they may not even have internet access. And they may have 4 children at home with 1 device or 2 devices. And families may have a working parent using the 1 device during the day. And I understand that we are behind on the schedule for distribution. So could you talk a little bit about what it's going to take to get devices in the hands of children? And also, what is the strategy for the families who don't get devices to start school off?
Yes. One of the key goal areas of our school district strategic plan is student success with equity and access. And so that's at the core of our value system as a district. And therefore, with the devices we have in place, and the gap is not, it's not that wide, but with the devices that we have in place, we are prioritizing students who don't have a device, in their home. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's okay. Yes, we don't have, so we're prioritizing our students who don't have a device at home and making sure that they are the first ones to receive them. So that's how we're addressing the equity issue, just making sure that those students are have first priority and are given the device. In terms of, we do have a very large order that's on its way. Right. That's beyond our control. Right. However, what we have done is we've pulled in every device that we have district-wide. I have to say our Chief Information Officer has done a tremendous job. Our regional superintendent's doubling down. We're making sure that we are spreading out the devices and that every child who needs one receives one. That is our goal over the next couple of days. We are asking families who have devices at home. We heard from many families that they had a device at home, but they thought they had to use the school issue device. So we hope that message is now out there. We are able to sustain your own device. And so you don't necessarily have to use that, or if you had it at home, you can return it to the school so that another child can have access.
So let me just be clear so I can make sure I understand that. So if a child has a PC at home or their own tablet that works, and the parents can return it, when they return, one of the concerns I heard today is that when in-person school returns, they will need a school system issued Chromebook.
Yeah.
Will they get one then? How will that work?
Yeah, thank you for raising that. It was actually the point I was going to make next, because I've heard that I've heard that as well. And there was a time in our school district where you had to have a school issued device because of the security. Our chief information officer and her team have worked on that, and that was actually part of their strategic plan. And so that has already been in place. It's I think your bring your own device policy. And I did hear that some parents felt like they had to hold on to that device because when we go back to school, whether it be in a hybrid model or full time, that they would need that device at that time. That is not the case. We have the infrastructure now, we have the policy in place that you can bring your own device and that you'll be able to use that at school. So thank you for raising that. And we hope that that clears up any confusion on that point. And if you do have a device at home that was school issued, and your child is not using it because they prefer their own device, we really do ask for your partnership in returning that to the school so that we can get those devices as quickly as possible into the hands of children who need them while we're waiting on the shipment of the additional devices we ordered.
That's really clear, and I think we will make sure that message gets shared on social media as well.
Thank you so much.
So I know you're a parent. And so this is a question maybe as parent and maybe as superintendent and probably as both. Do you have recommendations for parents on how to keep your kid organized while learning from home and simultaneously trying to manage screen time?
That is a great question. I could share again. I'm sure there are many parents in our school system that could probably give me a lot of advice on this as well. But maintaining, and this goes to the mental health question as well. It's really important to maintain a schedule. And one of the things I said during the spring to my young man is, you're not on vacation. Where you're still in school, and we have to maintain a schedule. So that's waking up at the same time, making sure that you're showering and putting on clothes. It's tempting to just wake up and stay in the bed and start typing away or being on screen, but you want to maintain that schedule. And if you have a chance, and we can send it to you directly so you can have it in case you want to share it with your community members, that we have issued a guidance for a daily schedule. And it starts with breakfast. It starts with a community time. We've built in times for fun and just community for students, as well as for celebrations, whether it be a school pep rally or other ways to get excited, but just really maintaining that regular schedule. And to the point of the screen time, that's why our approach has really been a combination of synchronous and asynchronous, so that we're also being cognizant of the fact that we don't want our children. Are you going to special places there?
Yeah, I think that the lights decided to turn off.
Oh, okay.
But they turned back. I didn't do anything.
That's good. Oh no, I thought it was a virtual background that you were.
Nope. It was just the lights going out.
Oh, okay.
They're back.
We're all good. Yes.
Technology is awesome.
Yes, that would be my main recommendation.
Okay.
For that the children are maintaining a regular schedule and understand that they're still in school as well. Thank you.
That's really good advice. I have a college daughter, and we had a lot of those discussions about pajamas and class in the spring. So I totally get it. So this is a question that Kirsten sent in, but to be full disclosure, I'm hearing it from everyone. And when I'm out and about and on social media, we actually had a neuroscientist offer on our Dunwoody Facebook page. Everyone wants to know how we can help the students who might need more support than they're going to be able to get at home. So what do you have concrete ideas, or can you send us concrete ideas for what the community can do, or members of the community? So as an example, today on Instagram or something, I saw a teacher in Mexico who made the back of her pickup truck a kindergarten classroom, and she was going from student to student. And I'm not suggesting we could do that, but Kirsten offered, she's not working, her daughter's old enough to supervise her own learning. Are there ways that we can take the human resources we have in our community and help others?
Absolutely. And one, I've just been so impressed and humbled by the amount of community members that have been reaching out with the very same question. And so shortly you should find on our website, where we're creating a banner now that says, how can I help? Because again, we've heard from so many people, and we're going to have a list of ways, gaps that we've identified, areas that we know we could use additional help. So to the point of the person who emailed that specific question, we've already heard from a number of retired teachers that want to offer their assistance with tutorials. This Dial a Teacher program will also probably need some volunteers above and beyond what we're able to sustain. But we're in the process of figuring all of that out. Right now, most of the support that we're receiving from our external stakeholders really has been in the form of supporting students with devices. So that's where we are right now. But we're trying to, take a breath while we're still running super speed for the opening of school, to really be thoughtful in our ask of our generous community members and how they can help us, both in kind, both time, or even financial assistance. So please look out for that.
We will, and please keep us informed, because we have a pretty big reach that we can let people know.
Absolutely. And we're also working on that, how we can make sure, back to the point of communication and over communicating. While we have our website, while individual schools have that, we want to reach out and ask for our great leaders like yourself, if we can share information with you, and that you can put it on your social media or whatever outlets you have, because we know that you might have a closer touch point with some of the community members than us. And our goal is really just to make sure everybody has the information that they need.
We're ready to be your partner. Absolutely ready to be your partner. A teacher, Laurie, wants to know if the buildings are going to be allowed to be used for SATs and ACTs. I know that's in the weeds a little bit.
Yeah, it is in the weeds. And we are in discussions about that. To this point, if you would just give me just a little bit of time to get back on that answer. I know where we are in our decision-making process. I don't know if it's been communicated to all the right stakeholders. Okay. So I don't want to misspeak on this call and not be respectful of everyone who really does need to make sure that they receive that information. But just so you know, it's an issue that we're aware of. We have had discussion, and we will be making a decision or communicating the decision to the necessary stakeholders.
Okay, great. I know that it's a very stressful year to be a parent of a senior because the standardized testing were all canceled back till March, and this is really hard. Yes. So I know y'all are weighing all the factors. Zoom apparently didn't work on Chromebooks. Jessica, let us know. Has that issue been addressed, or are you even aware of that?
No, I haven't actually heard that as an issue. I've heard a lot of issues about platforms and things like that, and we've tried to be very responsive. I know on Twitter, I did get someone tagged me in a tweet about making sure that some access was granted so that teachers would be fully prepared. It could have been about Zoom. I'm not 100% sure. I would ask if you could email me that specific concern at soup. At the soup at DeKalbSchoolsGA.org, and I will get you an answer. Any question that I'm unable to answer right now, if you email me at that location, we'll be sure to get your response right away.
That's great. One of the things that I've read a lot about, and I'm sure you've seen a lot, is using outdoor classroom spaces or using outdoors for classrooms. And of course, it's like 100 million degrees here right now, but it won't always be, I promise. I know you're new, but it won't always.
I love it, actually. I do.
So Heidi wants to know if teachers can use outdoor spaces now periodically while we're doing virtual instruction to do some in-person instruction during this virtual time.
I would be against that at this time, and I hope that you respect that decision. Our issue right now is community spread. So it isn't as much the issue of contracting COVID in our indoor spaces as it is just what we're seeing in the community. And one of the data points, and I have not received, I've received it, I just haven't had a chance to really review it today, but most recently, and what I presented at the board, is just within our school district, we've had 66 positive cases since July 1st, and 22 of those cases was just in the last week. Right. So, and that would have been the week before. So you can see the increase in numbers. So as much as we miss our scholars, believe me, the children, that's what feeds me. That's what energizes me. I wish I was with the children in person. And I know as a classroom teacher, you're missing that just as much. And our scholars are missing that. But we're not going back to school right now because we want to flatten this curve. And so we all have to, again, as you said, do our part in making sure that happens. And so as much as I admire and respect and can relate to your desire to be with the children in person, it's just not safe right now.
So I have a couple of other questions related to the here and now, like the COVID, before I get to maybe some bigger picture questions. One is just a question about, do you foresee teachers being able to get in the buildings before students come back? I know there's some teachers that would like to perhaps teach in the classrooms. Yes. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. So we have issued several guidance documents at this point. The first is around getting into the classroom to secure materials. Absolutely. Teachers should have been allowed. I've been in the school buildings this week. I've seen some teachers who have come to pick up necessary materials, etc. That was an agreement that should have been worked out between each teacher and their building level leaders to ensure that we're respecting social distancing, that we're cleaning behind everyone who's coming in the building, etc. The next policy that we issued was really around ensuring that every teacher had exactly what they needed to be successful. And so that we know that there's some teachers who have a hardship from teaching from home. And in those cases, we have relaxed our position on that, but we're making that a local decision between the teacher and the principal based on that specific teacher's circumstance. It's not just a blanket, if I want to teach in my classroom, I can, because again, we're trying to keep the numbers down. Once we start our back to brick and mortar space, certainly, just as we would have planned in the summer to allow teachers time to get into their classrooms before the children return, we will make those allowances. We know that that's important. So that's where we are right now. We're planning for the future. We're trying to make sure that the teachers who absolutely need that as an accommodation or a hardship, that we're being flexible there. But we're making sure you can get in your classroom to get the materials that you need. But most importantly, we just want to make the decisions that will be in everyone's best interest and to keep them safe.
I can totally appreciate it's a big responsibility feeling like everyone's safety is, in your hands. So right as the pandemic began, my friend Erica and I started an initiative in Dunwoody called Lunch for Our Bunch, because we could feel the change coming and we were worried about the students who depend on schools for breakfast and lunch. We partner with one of our local food pantries, and we still continue to collect food and supplies once a week to be distributed to families in our community. But simultaneously, the school system came up with a plan to distribute lunches. Can you tell us a little bit about what that's going to look like in the fall?
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you for everything that you're doing to also address the huge issues of food insecurities that we know exist in many of our communities. We have added additional food distribution sites. We've kept all of the same food distribution sites that existed over the summer because families are already familiar with those. We are adding additional, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but if you go on the website, you'll have all that information, exactly the location. But we have added additional food distribution sites based on gaps that we learned over the summer. We also are working on a community asset mapping. So to hear about where you are maybe giving out or have food distribution sites, we have a system. We actually launched it this weekend, but it crashed, so we had to go back to the drawing board. But it'll be up and running soon. I promise you that. Where families can actually just research in their cluster area where they can find meals. So it will be inclusive of our food distribution sites, as well as all of the other ones we learn as we go along the way, so that families can see exactly which food distribution sites will be, most convenient for them. But we, as an agency, also partner with the food bank and are trying to do the most comprehensive look at not only food distribution, but other wraparound services that we know our families need. And that will all be, again, on the website under the community asset mapping.
That sounds great. And we did use the local principals and their communication devices to continue to use them to spread the word that we're here. So let's switch from sort of the COVID and the immediate crisis to sort of bigger issues. Can you share, outside of COVID and the start of school, what 2 or 3 things that you've identified since you've gotten here or as you prepared to come need your immediate attention?
Well, my immediate attention, unfortunately, really has been consumed with opening of school, the change in the calendar. Right now, just monitoring where we're going with other in-person student events. But we also had a number of high-level vacancies. We had a number of interim chiefs as well as true vacancies. So that has been a first order of business, making sure we have that team in place. Those positions were all posted. We put together a robust hiring process and have had great interest from leaders all across the country. So that's something that was an immediate a position or priority for me. We also had to work on the budget. That was another big one, getting our budget passed with such a huge cut. So in all honesty, I've been deeply involved in these kind of really major decisions that needed to be made within my first month. But everyone should have received, if you receive the kind of constant contact that we have, of my 100-day entry plan. And so while we're doing these, making these major decisions, I'm also trying to honor, the space of listening and learning. And from that, I'm identifying additional gaps and areas that need to be tightened up. And so the community should expect at the completion of the 100 days, I will issue kind of a report of what I heard from community members, from all stakeholders, and the beginning of what I imagine to be my work for this first year. So that is a promise that you will receive a very detailed report to what I learned over these first 100 days, and how I'm using that information to inform our strategic planning process, as well as our priorities with the team, of course, for my first year here on the job.
So recently on social media, someone shared one of your newsletters, and everyone was raving.
Oh, that's
raving.
great.
So I don't know if there's a simple way to explain how people who, did it go to every parent in the system, or was that everybody that signed up through the school system? Is that how it was distributed?
Yes, that's my understanding, that you can subscribe to the newsletter. It is sent out to all of the families that have signed up, for the communication from the school department.
Well, if it's okay with you, because I was very impressed,
Thank you.
we will share the link to sign up on our Facebook page in the next few days, and in our we send out a weekly newsletter as well.
Oh,
but
great.
It was a breath of fresh air was one of the quotes. Like you, I value communication, and I think being in front of things rather than behind them is always a good strategy. And so, but I do think, I expect that we have people watching tonight who don't have children in the system, or whose children are long grown from the system. And so, but we're all stakeholders in some way, shape, or form. And so I'd like to offer them the opportunity to stay connected as well.
Absolutely. And I'm also open to feedback. The first, I think we're on the sixth edition of the newsletter. The first few have really been an introduction and kind of keeping up with me and how I'm, entering the district. But I think that the format may change just a little bit, where I could really give more an in-depth look of the incredible work that's happening in the district, or, things that we're grappling with. But I'm always open to feedback. If there's additional information that the communities feel they're craving in that newsletter, please, again, send those suggestions to that soup email, and we will incorporate that, or do our very best to incorporate that in the future.
Well, I am so grateful that you have chosen to spend time with us in what must be a very hectic schedule as you get ready to open school in 3 days.
Yes.
And also you've moved here in a very unusual time. I promise you we're all really hospitable normally. We would have had you for lunch, brought you flowers, but the current situation makes that very difficult. My citizens, the residents of Dunwoody, have heard me say repeatedly the last few months, they're probably a little tired of hearing it, that we need to give everyone space and grace.
I love that.
During this time. And we know that Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday next week probably aren't going to go perfectly. Yes. Nothing has for months in any parts of our lives, really. And so, I would ask everyone to continue to practice that space and grace with the school system as we work out the kinks. Because we all, I think, pretty confidently can say we all wish we were meeting in person. Maybe no one more than I, that we wish that the virus had not been practically managed this way, I guess is the lack of a better word. But in the meantime, as we continue to work to make it so that it's safe and practical to get children and teachers back in buildings, that we all just maybe be a little more patient
Mhm. Well, I really appreciate that. I love that space and grace. I wrote that down.
Yeah.
I will use that and I will give you credit.
Thank you.
But I do thank you so much for that message, because everyone is working over capacity right now, really, to ensure that we create the most empowering and joyful is the word I've been using, experience for our scholars. And I thank you so much for having me and for creating this space for me to answer some of the questions, to hear some of the points of confusion, because that's all very, very helpful. So I appreciate it.
And I'd like to invite you back, hopefully in person, here to City Hall perhaps, or the Dunwoody High School Auditorium. And we can talk about other things, besides the current back to school and COVID. And I look forward to meeting you in person, as I'm sure everyone in Dunwoody does. And so welcome to DeKalb.
Thank you very, very
And
much.
again, thank you. And thank you everyone for attending. And this will be available on Facebook and YouTube, so you can share it with your friends, because we are so lucky to have Madam Superintendent here with us in DeKalb. So everyone have a good night, stay safe, wear your mask, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.